Hey everyone, it's Jax again from the Popcorn Review Podcast. Today's going to be about Monday Night Raw. This is my episode 20, and it's going to be for Raw for 428. This one had a lot going on, had a lot of people pretty much telling us why they did what they did. You do have in this episode, it started off with Paul Heyman, Braun Breaker, and Seth Rollins in the ring, pretty much telling people why they're the ones who are going to be into the future. That you got, almost like another disciple, if that makes sense, of Seth Rollins or his right hand man. He has Braun Breaker there, his workhorse, his dog. Um, a little bit after them getting into that, you did hear Sami Zayn's music hit, and Sami calls out, and he's pretty much just calling out Seth Rollins, saying this is bullshit. Exactly what you didn't like about CM Punk and Roman Reigns is exactly what you're doing. You have the right hand man next to you, which he's pointing at Braun Breaker, and you still have the wise man to your left. So everything you complained about Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, you yourself is doing the exact same thing. Seth did give Sami an ultimatum saying that if you're not with me, you're against me, and I'll give you to the end of the night to make up your decision. Now, that was pretty much left it at that. We're going to come back to this later on in the episode. You did have Judgment Day there. You had Liv and Finn and JD were talking. Apparently, Liv went with JD, made a match there with the management team, and JD and Finn don't have titles, as Liv put it there, don't have titles, so she helping you guys get back into the title reign. Finn still looks a little bit standoffish with the group, so that's definitely going to come to a head at some point. Don't know when. You did have, JD and Finn, talk about, yeah, we're going to be championships, and then Carlito's like, man, everybody's going to have championships. Like, this is going to be so amazing. Then he looks at his apple and then leaves it at that. Like, Carlito's just there for, you know, funny or gimmick. So Carlito's always been. I mean, at one point he was a U.S. champion, but right now he's just more of a comedic relief, if anything. Um, you did have a few matches there going on. You have Rhea Ripley versus Roxanne there. It was actually a pretty good match, to be honest with you. Roxanne, I haven't seen much of her except when she's on the main roster. I don't watch NXT anymore. But Roxanne was actually impressive against Rhea Ripley there. She looked really good in the ring. Together, they had really good chemistry. Roxanne is a little bit smaller than Rhea Ripley, but they were both doing their thing, both doing really good moves. Um, like normal, though, they had, I think her name was Julia, gets involved, hits her from behind, cost Roxanne the match. So technically, Rhea Ripley won the match, but they ended up beating her down. They beat her up for a little while. Io Sky's music hits, coming out in all yellow, comes out, attacks the girls, gets the better of them for a little while, and then you see actually they start beating her down. Rhea Ripley comes and kind of like chases the girls off, so it's 2-on-2. At some point, it's gonna be like one of those things like my enemy is my friend. So at some point, them two are gonna tag team against those two girls. And to be honest with you, not sure when it's gonna happen, but at some point, Roxanne Perez is just gonna have to move up to the main roster. She's been on here for multiple pay-per-views and now multiple Mondays. Just bring the girl up. Have her chase one of the mid-card titles and just have her grow from there. Yes, they have the new thing with Lyra going on with Becky Lynch. We'll get into that. You did have you are gonna have, or what's her name? You had Zelina Vega beat Chelsea Green. So technically Perez can come up and start up a feud with one of those two girls. I know that right now they're gonna have her tied up with Bailey and them and Lyra. So we'll see how that plays out. Um, I will say at some point you did have Logan Paul come out and just talk a bunch of shit about what's his name, Jey Uso, that he doesn't look like a champion, he doesn't deserve to be a champion, that he does. And I hate Logan Paul as a person, and I don't like using that word hate, but I just don't like the way he is. Um, Logan Paul is a wrestler, though. He's an amazing athlete. Cannot take that away from him. But that song that he played for WrestleMania talking about he's humble, he's anything but humble. This guy's so full of shit, it's not even funny. But let's move on to this. Um, So apparently, Logan Paul is going to be Jey Uso's first opponent. It makes a lot of sense. We didn't know who Jey Uso was going to go against. I thought it might be Sami Zayn turning on Jey. Um, it actually looks like you're going to have again, Logan Paul versus Jey Uso at Backlash. And this kind of did the same thing with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns ended up, wrestling Logan Paul at one point. I think in Saudi Arabia, Crown Jewel, something like that. So it just makes sense. They need to put someone that has a lot of heat with the fans against Jey Uso. He's one of the biggest baby faces. Logan Paul's one of the biggest heels, other than Dom. Um, so to be honest with you, it makes a lot of sense. Don't like that Logan Paul's getting another world championship title shot over other guys who have been there. But at the same time, you also have to build Jey Uso's resume on who he beat. I still think Sami Zayn might turn heel at some point. Maybe he might join Seth Rollins and his group later on, because it did look like I mentioned last week. Sami Zayn did have like a little hesitation behind Jey Uso when they were celebrating last week. So I could see at some point, Sami, turning on Jey there. We'll see how it plays out, to be honest with you. Um, you know, Logan Paul just kept talking BS, talking shit, and Jey Uso kind of got tired of it, super kicked his face. Great sell by Logan Paul. Like I said, he sold that tremendously. It could have been a stiff kick, to be honest with you, but if not, he sold the shit out of it. It looked like he really got hurt. Um, Later on, you did see that, Jay was talking to Sammy about about the agreement that he made with Seth Rollins and everything. If you're with me or against me. You did have one point there that you did have Paul Heyman come up to Sammy. He's like, "Hey, if you leave Raw today, I have a title shot lined up for you with whoever's the winner with Cena and Randy Orton. You'll be the next one in line for a title shot." So that was very intriguing to him. He wants it. He wants to be a world champion. Sammy at some point hope he does win it. I think he's been tag team. He's been intercontinental champion a bunch of times. So the next step for him would be the world championship, or the undisputed championship. So we'll see where they end up putting him. Um, he does get really upset with that. You have him kind of saying like, that I want that, and you're kind of throwing that in my face. You did have a segment with the Judgment Day fighting or wrestling the War Raiders to see who was going to be number one contender. Like I mentioned, Liv ended up getting the match. Um, Great match, to be honest with you. JD looked like he never got hurt. He actually looks really strong. His physique, if that makes sense to anybody. He was always a skinny guy, but he just looked more lean. If anything, he just took the time off just to work out, and you can definitely see it. Um, JD's just happy to be back in the ring, it looks like, and Finn Balor just pissed off about everything. At some point, you did have Carlito, like always, trying to get into it. Helped his guys win the match. So that did happen for a while. But then you see Penta and all red and white jump in, knocks JD down. Actually ends up costing the Judgment Day the match, but I was actually surprised. But, he got his get back on JD because JD took him out last week to lose the Intercontinental Championship. So he kind of did the same thing to make them lose their number one contender. Apparently, it's going to be the War Raiders against the New Day again. We'll see how it plays out, to be honest with you. Um, and then later on, you hear that they announced that Penta's going to wrestle JD. You're going to see something happen there because there was a segment earlier. You had kind of like Penta talking, and then you had Chad and Ivy Niles come in talking about, oh, your brother lost on his first day of WrestleMania, but you know who didn't lose? And then he has his little like vote for Pedro t-shirt with his mass persona's name on it. And again, I hate saying the name. I feel like it's so stupid. It's a Starbucks retired drink at this point. But he's like, who didn't lose his opener was, what's his name? And everyone knows it's Chad, so Penta kind of like kicks him in his chest and was like, "Don't worry about it. Whatever you do, the Lucha Brothers going to come back." So I think they're going to use this to get the Lucha Brothers to join forces. Penta can't fight everybody by himself. He's not in the LWO technically. He didn't want to join the Judgment Day, so Penta's kind of on an island by himself. You do have his brother, Ray Phoenix in SmackDown, so that may be part of the trade when the people start trading and going back and forth between shows. You are going to see that happen. I definitely see that Penta's going to have an issue, and then Penta's going to have to lean on his brother for the Lucha Bros to go against American Made. I definitely want to see that. You did have announced that Penta was going to wrestle JD for next week. I definitely see Chad Gable or his mask persona cost Penta the match, so then him and Penta could have one. And I think what's gonna happen is Penta's gonna lose. His brother's gonna save him. So Ray Phoenix and Penta. And then when Ray Mysterio comes back, he's gonna see that Chad's getting a lot of these luchadors L's, and he's gonna come in and beat him and then take his mask off. That's how I see it playing out, to be honest with you. Um, you did again have a bunch of matches. But the main thing is that you had Pat McAfee pretty much call Gunter out, or Gunther out, whatever you want to call him, and saying that he wants them to reverse the suspension, he wants them to reverse the fines, that he wants Gunther in the building so he can technically put his hands on him because what he did to Michael Cole and what he did to himself by choking him out. Um, Nick Aldis was in charge this week, and he pretty much said that we knew you were going to feel this way, you and Gunter at Backlash. Feel like this should have had a lot of build up or more build up. It was like 1 week and then boom, pay-per-view. Kind of rushed that. Um Pat McAfee doesn't wrestle. I think he hasn't wrestled since last year's WrestleMania, if I'm not mistaken, or SummerSlam. I think it was a WrestleMania though. So it was like he hasn't been in there for a while. Why put him against Gunther, and what would it help? Gunther's going to be beating up a commentary guy. Yes, this guy's an ex-athlete, but he hasn't wrestled in the ring for over a year. What is the purpose of that? I know they want, Gunther to move on from Jay, but what is Gunther going to do now? Imperium doesn't look like they're together right now. So what is the purpose of having Gunther in a match? Just to put something on the pay-per-view. Not really, unless somebody helps Pat McAfee, he's not going to beat Gunther. Gunther's going to squash him. Chop the shit out of his chest, chop city, and Gunther's going to take the W. Unless something magical happens in that match. To be honest with you, I don't see that being the case, but I like the way that he was standing up for Michael Cole, though. That was really nice. Michael Cole was actually very drawn back, but you could tell he was kind of like covering his face, probably not so he wouldn't laugh at the situation. But it is what it is. You did have Becky Lynch, come out and pretty much say that Lyra was garbage. Lyra is just getting off of her coattails. Lyra is not as good as she thinks, and pretty much said the reason why Bailey was taken out was because of me. Don't look too far. I'm the one that took Bailey out. You don't have to go play the game Clue. I took Bailey out. You wouldn't have won the tag titles if it wasn't for me. With Bailey, you would have lost pretty much. So she was pretty much just talking down to Bailey. So I guess it's gonna bring Bailey back. Um, Depending on what happens, honestly, I always thought Bailey was going to turn heel on Lyra. It looks like Bailey's going to lean on Lyra, but I think Lyra is actually going to lose the title to Becky. If I'm not mistaken, they announced they're going to wrestle at Backlash as well. I think Lyra is going to lose to Becky, and that's going to force Bailey to come back and beat Becky, which would then give Bailey that much closer to being a Grand Slam champion. If she wins the Intercontinental Championship, like I mentioned, all she needs is a U.S. women, and she's a um complete women's what's it called, Grand Slam champion. So definitely makes sense. Bailey was the first one initially. It makes sense to let Bailey do that again. But I definitely see Bailey winning that Intercontinental Championship, whether it's against Lyra or Becky Lynch. I see Becky Lynch winning though, and Lyra taking over. So Becky Lynch is definitely leaning into that heel character. I know a lot of fans were saying that they want Becky Lynch to join Paul Heyman's group with Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker. Doesn't make sense to me unless something drastic happens. There's no women there actually that makes sense, that are kind of causing problems in another group. So it doesn't make sense to bring the woman in there. If not, it'd be similar to Marina Shafir in the Death Riders. There's really not a lot of women for her to go against because they're mostly fighting men group, but we'll see how it goes, to be honest with you. The night ended just the way it started. You had Seth Rollins in the ring, called Sammy out, saying, "Sammy, I need an answer." Sammy was pretty much calling him a hypocrite again. He was like, "How can you dangle that carrot in my face that I want to be a world champion and you just dangle it in my face?" He goes, "If you were a true friend, you wouldn't ask me to do that. You wouldn't force me to go to another show just to let you do what you want to do over here." He goes, "You're a hypocrite. That's BS. And I'm no longer going to do that." And right there, Braun Breaker's music hits. He comes out with Paul Heyman to his left, and they walk to the ring. And Braun Breaker, man, he has been a monster. He's been on a tear. He's definitely been taking care of people. Anybody he's wrestled lately or anybody he's interacted with, he's been spearing the hell out of them. Um, Braun Breaker's going to be a world champion at some point. I did mention in previous episodes that I think he's going to be the one to take the title from Jay, and it looks like it could be building to that. So let's see what happens. But Sammy technically in street clothes was wrestling Braun for the main event, and Braun pretty much just took it to him. Just took it to him. And Seth Rollins kept looking at Sammy like, you can, this could be over. Just say you want to go to SmackDown. This all could be over. And Sammy was like, screw you. And then he pretty much looks at Braun and goes, that's it. Take him out. Run around again. Spears the shit out of him. Go running around the ring. Puts him in there. The ref actually calls the match. Sammy can't continue. He got speared too much. Sammy can't continue. You do have Seth Rollins kind of like having Braun in the aisle, like, no, it's okay. It's okay. Relax, relax. And then he turns around and curb stomps Sammy. So 2 weeks in a row, you have Braun Breaker, Seth Rollins, and Paul Heyman standing tall in the ring while everybody's carcass is in the middle of the ring. 2 weeks in a row. They're definitely trying to build this group strong. Let's see what next week plays, guys. Let me know your guys' feedback. And again, this is Jax from the Popcorn View Podcast. Have a great one.